So now the lady who is the owner of the establishment, who also does all the cooking, her husband's still in bed, is going to show me in a few minutes how to make the excellent omelets that she makes. Off with a little bit of diced chives, maybe, and onions, and some tomatoes.
Onion, tomatoes, with 2 eggs.
With 2 eggs. Okay. Mix the eggs, right?
One egg.
1 egg. Salt and pepper in?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Có bột sữa không?
Không. Tí bột nêm, bột sữa.
Yes. And then scramble. Put a little oil inside the pan.
Okay.
Tí dầu thôi.
Just a little. It's not too much. Because if too much you will feel not casting.
Too greasy?
Too rich, that's right. And then scramble.
Nice scramble. You must use chopsticks to scramble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Không cho con phở về một lá gì hết.
And the small pan is useful.
That's right. Special pan for things like that.
Yeah. Make one at a time.
Yeah.
Notice how she pushes it all to the side. And she's pushing it underneath itself. Ah, I see. So notice she keeps pushing it underneath against the side until it folds over on itself, and then it's all done. Ah, fantastic.
Okay, done.
Okay, thank you very much.
You want to try that?
Sure, sure. Thank you.
For you, yeah.
Come on, come
You're
on.
welcome.
The important part of that demonstration was that when she's just about got it kind of cooked, she'll push the whole omelet over against the side. And you see this curve? That's where that comes from. Keeps pushing it underneath with the spatula until it rolls over on itself into this pretty little elongated pancake form. That's it. A motorcycle driver from the hostel Tun has brought me here to the first tomb we're going to visit, which is the tomb of Kai Din over there on the lower right. And then we're going to go to the tomb of Ming, then maybe to Mieu Pagoda, and then he'll drop me off at the supermarket, and I'll walk back to the hostel. It was from the emperor who became emperor in 1916, and this was finished in 1931. He died in, I think, 1925, and it was finished by his son or the next heir. So these are our first 4 big nagas that we use for approach. Just at the top of the stairs, I'll give you a little hint. These things were built by emperors before they died. In other words, they wanted to make damn sure that they knew what their legacy was going to be. The problem for this emperor is he was pretty much hated by his people because he was pretty much a puppet of the French. And then he also jacked up taxes 30% to pay for this. Nothing surprising there. The more imposing nagas. Think of this as the final ego trip of emperors. The stele, probably memorializing his great deeds, parentheses not, close parentheses. These are warrior guardians or bodyguards, if you will, including a horse. And I'll never get away with this in Greece. They get really annoyed when you mock their monuments. Compare this concrete monstrosity with those beautiful temples we saw yesterday in the small village that also has the Japanese bridge. And the further problem with these things, they offer nothing of value to the society, particularly when the emperor is hated. Of course, the pyramids are probably the epitome of self-aggrandizement. But then if a society stupidly lets one person pretend that they're a god, as the United States has done with Obama in his first administration, if not the second, then why should it be surprised when it gets what it doesn't like? Sad thing is, for all of the money spent, for all of the effort expended, for all of the concrete used, what you see there is about the prettiest thing I've seen, and it isn't. Everything else is just big. Like somehow posterity would forget the lie that this emperor was. Supposedly, this architecture contains a great deal of French influence, mainly because he was invited by the French to visit, parentheses, pay homage to France, and picked up ideas from there. It is possible, in looking at this portion, it looks like it's either been cleaned up or bleached by weather. We may get a sense of what the whole place looked like when it was clean, instead of the moss and lichen infested incrustation that it is now. Again, nothing pretty at all. And it isn't anything other than cement with a thin veneer of detail. Behind its genetic potential, by analogy, does a society fall when its leaders squander these kind of funds? These interior rooms, the only semblance of beauty, and there is considerable beauty here. It's nicely done. If this lightness is French, then it's a nice effect. Concentrate on these panels just to see them. They are pretty. A band of small detail.
No, because of here, because we have the tropical climate and we have the wet weather. We just want it here. But in the Myanmar only one person.
It's all on this elaborate altar. That is the fop himself. That's beautiful work, isn't it? A duplicate of the other side. Interior room is truly spectacular. Not that that should have benefited in any way at all the people of this country. guessing that that's all ceramic up there. This room, of course, dramatically overshadows the rest of this entire complex. Just seems to me to be French, but I really don't know why. Get some of that close-up of the broken pottery. Some of the pieces rather pretty. Let's look at the detail of this border. He's glorified, but he should be maligned for the fraud that he was, although I'm not sure he had any control over any of it. A puppet in all senses, perhaps. King and queens of England, the symbol of the unity of in the history and the culture of Britain is perhaps what the essence is. What were his thoughts? If only we could know. The motif we saw last night of the bird standing on the tortoise. I want to look more closely at this centerpiece.
Good for him.
Just before we go inside, perhaps there's more beauty there. Must be something that he picked up in France. Approaching the tomb of Mang. This was built in 1840. He died before it was completed. Walk into these grounds is the class of tranquility. This emperor was one of, I believe, the true emperors. The fact that everything we're looking at here is a reflection of tradition for decades, if not hundreds of years, certainly several emperors' reigns. This reminds me of some of the beautiful places I've seen in many parts of the world. Not that that justifies being an emperor or a king, but in its day. This would have been the original gate, I believe. The center one reserved for the emperor, of course. Gives you a sense of the power that these people must have had, that this was where they intended to be buried. You can just imagine the grandeur and the lands they controlled for their living pleasure. You can see where our first emperor that we visited today took some of his ideas from, just so he could connect with the tradition. These Nagas in a cage or a phone booth are reminiscent of the ones we saw where the 9 urns were. This is the entrances, the salutation court, and the stele house. Of course, is the stele house. Climb up a couple of relatively low tiers or terraces to that entry into what probably is a more important building, or at least different one. But what's pretty are the magnificent grounds. I mean, if you really thought of your soul and of your essence as immortal, yet somehow still able to empathize and enjoy the world as you've known it during your life, this would be an ideal spot. This door was opened only once, and that was to bring the casket of the emperor through it, and it's never been opened since. One of these may be an audience hall. To the left, the Hue Tung Temple. Probably tiles from the original building before it was restored. Pretty much the same design as we've seen, except here the columns richly embellished with painting in gold. Interesting how these little ceiling joists in this gallery are just made out of turned wood or columns, if you will, where the center also uses those columns, but with some very elaborate cross bracing. Here the lovely porch, if you will, although it's not, with its doors. Main temple, constructed 1840 to 43. It's the 2 teeth, it looks like, in between those 2 Nagas. Take a little closer look at the pottery detail. It's interesting how they get the color. Notice those 2 orange pieces matched up to flank that dark one. Little decisions like that the artist might have made that we can empathize with at this point in time. We enter into this more intimate section next to the temple, the royal toilet. Perhaps this was a comfortable, peaceful place to be, but it's not a residence. Remember, this is where you plan to store your body for eternity. Was great access to the ponds. Wouldn't you think the emperor would come out here and paddle about, contemplating his eternity? And if he had been an intelligent person, wouldn't he have contemplated his life? I'd have walked out that door just to go to the bathroom. Here we're behind, almost behind the temple. I'm going to walk along this wall here, but not until we've panned this beautiful environment. What a lovely park-like area. I wonder if it gets used for picnics and so forth, but at 100 dong a shot, I doubt it. Well, there's the temple. And now I'm back looking at this beautiful building back here. Hopefully that's his tomb. Although I would prefer to, as Woody Allen would suggest, just simply not die and just live there instead. Intricacy of that root system on the surface. Wonder what it's like under the surface. Or is this how it gets its purchase? If I'd have done it correctly, I would have walked around the temple, through here. Again, how pretty it is. Not a place to die in, a place to live in. I'm forever walked out here along this bridge that I'm walking on. Stopped, took off his clothes, handed them to a servant, said, "Hold this, I'll be back." Walked over there, jumped in and went for a swim. For his sake, we can only hope. This is the Ming Pavilion, typical wooden two-story construction of the Nguyen, Nguyen. I suspect that means the dynasty. It lies on Tam Tai Mountain. The Pavilion of Light is what Min Lao means, to praise the Ming Mang Emperor's talent and contribution. It lies the Emperor's provisional step over before his arrival at the final resting place, structure built in 1841. I understood that. It would seem to suggest that it's reflecting the concept that when we know we're going to die, we do everything we can to prevent it, to stall the ultimate moment. In other words, that last spark of the will to live before it's snuffed out by eternity. Rather an elaborate structure for that, don't you think? Beautiful large table. The stairway. One of the prettiest I'll ever see for this function. Himself to the inevitable, apparently. He leaves this building symbolically for eternity over there. So off we go. Full garden though, isn't it? And presumably this is a pretty good example of how it once was. The fact that they kept this tile that an animal, perhaps a cat, had walked across before it dried. It's these huge monuments. I wonder if these are analogous to those grotesque European things that I saw at the first monument. Please excuse my pejorative descriptions. The one on that side. How religions and cultures symbolized water. You wonder if this was symbolic of the passage from life to death. I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. Even the water seems to end here. Pretty bucolic scene with that egret flying past those cows grazing. Notice that set of steps over there? So this is a separate pond here, walled off from the larger ponds over there. Again, a symbol, I would think. Profoundly important gates. And it may be those gates up there are the ones that were never opened again. Notice what looks to be a circular, if not a lotus leaf wall design. That may just be my imagining. The Hue Tung is a round wall that protects the emperor's tomb. Hue Tung is an underground palace where the emperor's corpse was placed. It was brought through an underground channel that was then closed permanently. These constructions were built in 1841. Oh, so many times they tried to hide. You can hide, but we'll find you. What we have is a mound covering the grave palace beneath. Isn't this perhaps symbolic of those small mounds I saw in the cemetery yesterday? I wonder. Looking back along the axis that we've just walked, from death, where I am now, to life. And you may be sure I intend to walk very carefully down these steps and across that bridge. This obelisk seems right out of The Lord of the Rings. Beautiful grounds, as I'm sure this cow would agree. A lovely spot for contemplation and munching. The bridge I crossed over, not to be memorialized for that fact. This is the pavilion, built for the emperor's entertainment, such as fishing, scenery beholding, and relaxing. And my guess is messing around with concubines. Let's be honest here, folks. This, of course, was the original one. It's those stones that still feel the vibration of the emperor's step. Interesting how we revere our history, even though it may not be worthy of being revered, but a tourist dollar is a tourist dollar anywhere in the world. Created these, picked his pottery pieces in the same way that a painter picks colors from a palette. Building, right building. Dwellings for the emperor's concubines, eunuchs as well as other servants after his death. I think if it were only a time lapse of a few centuries, I'd be living in heaven until they cut off everything that could be cut off. We're retracing our steps, but just for a different perspective. This artist's work is relegated to the quasi-temporary trash heap. These bodyguards in any way at all reflected who the original bodyguards were. And were they put to death at his death? We're now at the last place we're going to go to, Thieu Pagoda, up in the upper left-hand corner. Nice things about having a local driver on the motorcycle is he knows all the little dirt paths actually to get from one place to another. Pretty intricate. It would have taken me a long time to try to negotiate that with a bicycle or even a motorbike. Pretty an ancient looking entryway. The trickling sounds of a stream right to the side. Just adds a lot to the ambience. Lovely setting with a black butterfly that I just disturbed. They don't like to light, those black ones. Isn't this a pretty entryway? Lovely surroundings. The pond over there. Big fish floating, almost floating in the water. It's so stagnant, and it's a wonder they can probably survive. But the setting is pretty. So if you're a believer, this is the equivalent of a quiet cathedral. Yet to me, far more alluring, even from a religious viewpoint, were I religious. No tourists. What's lovely is that the buildings here, like this bell tower, are just left in the midst of the trees. Probably rather, I should say, the trees are left to surround it rather than having the land cleared away. Perhaps a drum tower up there, I don't know. We'll explore all this area in just a few moments. Pretty surrounding. All of this looking so musty old because of the warm rain. And these probably they are cemetery grave sites. Outside of the temple compound. If in any way it all connects with these mounds here. In fact, if you look closely, you'll see a little ridge around there. Could those be ridges that are naturally found on turtles somehow? I don't remember. Use a monastery, particularly if you have illusions of going to choose a monastery, particularly if you think you might want to make it your life's endeavor. Why wouldn't you hunt around and find one like this? Would you perceive it as too easy a life? Not ascetic enough? Now notice this little small stele building, which probably memorializes the person or the intent of this whole complex. And then another. You go in, I want to take a look at these panels on the side of the entrances. Isn't that a dramatic way to provide a little bit of light and airflow, and yet some seclusion? This one's on the left side. Isn't this a lovely setting? Notice how these little vignettes almost seem to remind you of expanded versions of the bonsai concept. What's novel here are the banners and the little trees on either side, and these which almost look like a sleeping bed, but I believe it's simply a platform on which people can kneel. And are those turtles? I can't tell for sure what they are. Must be old gongs or something. Number of congestion on this altar area. Completely through the temple to the other side and out. In this beautiful courtyard, which seems to be a set of 4 temple-like buildings. There's versions of those buildings that are for discussion, teaching. And notice our orange trees. Aren't these pretty? Can't you just imagine that a person who lived here and spent a lot of time in this garden would actually begin to build up think that a person who lived here and walked amongst these bonsais would begin to think of them individually, build stories about what each of them meant for him, what he saw in each of these. Yeah, definitely another temple, completely or directly opposite the one we were just in. These are sedate, subdued, dark, but not ominous. So simple, so pretty. Pretty tree. It's an impressive pot and stand. Haven't seen a butterfly in a long time that stopped long enough. No, it actually looks dark when it flies. I think I'm in a residential area, but I can't figure out how to get out of it. It's very pretty. It's where I think they may have tea, maybe eat. I'm still looking for the Grand Pagoda, and I'm not finding one. More likely, it seems, I've found a cemetery here with some pretty impressive monuments. They all look quite new, but no pagodas. I'll traipse back over to the opposite side. Now we're back on this side. We'll explore deeper. Another entry gate complex here, but only to a small cemetery. So whatever the pagoda is, I saw it, but I don't know that I saw it. Looking back in the direction I just came, we'll drop down the hill to the left of that pond that you see. Notice there's another grave site like we saw yesterday. Those circular ones created out of nagas with the undulating sides. It's possible that this little pagoda complex here is what I'm supposed to be here for. Don't know. Soon my driver fellow dropped me off here at the co-op mart because I thought it would be open, but unfortunately it was closed. So I just came down here and ordered a soup, and then he realized it was closed, so he came to get me. I have no idea what this is. It's something to do with meat, and so does this, but I'm not sure which is which. It tastes as though it were something that were mixed up and then cooked, so it has kind of like a spongy design to it, but it doesn't bend like a sponge does, so it's like crunching kind of through soft foam, if that makes any sense. The taste is meat, but otherwise unidentifiable. And this is some kind of gelatinous something or other. Again, it's probably meat-based, but I can't tell. It doesn't seem liver-based, and it's not a pate. It really is some kind of gelled something or other. I'd pay $20 to go for a half-hour ride in one of these boats before I'd pay $20 to go for an hour ride in one of those. Looks like our friend is taking the Tet holiday off, though. Fishermen, see by his metal nets, those cones. There are exhausts for some kind of engine in there. I wonder if all this sculpture has any specific meaning individually, or whether it's just put in here to kind of fill up the park and add some interest. Interesting waterside, actually in the water, structure. I'm guessing it's a restaurant. Some actually are interesting. This one's interesting. One long arm with several extensions on it on the bottom there, reaching up into the right, and then this figure, this woman, I think, yes, woman, naked, I think, can't be sure of that, in almost the clasping, grabbing hands of that upright fixture. But notice these sharp things at the end here where her feet go. Is that somehow something to do with Christianity? I don't know. But any sculpture or work that makes you stop and ponder, it has to be considered very creative, I think. Some people haul amazingly heavy loads, or at least it looks like it.